Smartsheet MCP is now available, allowing you to unlock the power of AI by connecting Smartsheet to large language models. When this first became available, the most common way to use it was through Claude, but MCP support is now expanding broadly across the AI ecosystem, including platforms like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and even Google Gemini. The Smartsheet MCP server allows you to read, analyze, and manage Smartsheet data directly from a chat interface without ever needing to even navigate the Smartsheet interface itself, helping you save time and improve on productivity. Today, I'm going to demonstrate how the Smartsheet MCP can enhance project management activities through a real-world scenario. Explore some of the practical considerations when introducing AI into operational environments, and compare that experience with a more structured MCP approach using Make.com. And most importantly, we'll look at how different approaches can help organizations operationalize AI across their entire business process. Now, before we get into the full scenario, let me quickly show you what this looks like when it works from end to end. Here, I'm asking Claude to look at a project rate item, check related email contacts, and determine whether or not a risk can be closed. Now, because Smartsheet and Outlook are both connected, Claude can identify the relevant rate item, find supporting email evidence, and suggest an update directly from the chat interface. Once I approve it, the rate item is updated in Smartsheet, and if we refresh the sheet, you can see that the changes have been applied. And now that's the real value of connecting AI to operational systems. Instead of jumping between Smartsheet and email manually, we can use a conversational interface to retrieve context, make a decision, and update the system. Now let's step back and walk through the entire scenario properly. Let me provide some context around the environment that we'll be working with today. I'm acting as the project manager for a telecommunications company responsible for projects delivered under the construction governance program. Now within Smartsheet, you can see that there are multiple workspaces involved. The program workspace provides overall visibility across the entire program, whilst the PMO workspace is used for day-to-day project delivery activities. So within the PMO workspace, I'm actively managing rate logs, project delivery, risks, actions, and also governance activities. And this context is particularly important because in real-world environments, information is rarely stored in just a single place. Relevant information is often distributed across multiple workspaces, sheets, and systems. And that becomes particularly relevant when AI is interacting with these kind of operational data. Before we begin, it's worth understanding what's happening behind the scenes. Through MCP, we've exposed capabilities from systems like Smartsheet and Outlook as tools that Claude can access. Rather than following a predefined process, the AI agent determines which tools to use, what information it needs, and how it should approach the tasks, all based on the objective that it's been given. And that's one of the key strengths of MCP-based approaches. Instead of hard-coding a sequence of actions, we're allowing the AI to reason across available tools and decide how best to solve the problem. For this demonstration, I'll be using Claude. Now, I've already connected Claude to the Smartsheet MCP so that AI can access all the project management assets. And I've also connected it to Microsoft 365, so I'm now exposing my emails to AI so that it can analyze it as well. Now, I've created a separate walkthrough covering the full setup process, including permission settings and also the configuration settings itself. You'll find links to those resources below. But for this video, I want to stay focused on the business scenario itself. And first, I am going to ask AI to list all the projects under the construction governance program. Now you can see it trying to reason through our Smartsheet environment to find what we need. You can see it's managed to find 4 projects from the construction governance folder under the program workspace. However, this folder is not actively managed and it contains archived and inactive projects along with the active ones. So ultimately, the information presented here isn't really useful. And here we can see one of the trade-offs with more exploratory AI use cases. AI is able to broadly search across the environment and infer relevant assets, but without additional context, it doesn't necessarily understand which workspace or sheet represent the operational source of truth. And in larger environments, providing more specific guidance around where the AI should search becomes increasingly important. So with that being said, I'm going to give it more hints here by telling it where to look. You can see now immediately it's able to reference the right sheet, but the only thing is that it's brought back an entire list of active projects from the sheet rather than just showing me the ones under the construction governance program like I asked. So this highlights how AI can occasionally lose part of the context during multi-step reasoning. AI did at least highlight that the project Build Smart sits under the construction governance program. So with that, I am going to ask it to give me a bit more information on the project. Because the request here was intentionally broad, Claude retrieved information across multiple operational assets related to the project. This included rate logs, plans, and even budget information. And this flexibility can be extremely powerful because it can dynamically pull together information from multiple sources based on the objective we've provided. But it also reinforces the importance of specificity when working across larger operational environments. As the purpose of today's scenario is rate management, I'm going to ask it to check my mailbox to see if any of the risks can be closed. And as a safeguard, I've also stated for the AI to ask for permission before making any changes. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to relate any risks to my email correspondences. For reference, this is the email I was expecting AI to identify. So when searching across email contexts, the quality of retrieval can also heavily depend on the signals available to AI. This can include subject lines, naming conventions, and also contextual references inside the messages themselves. So with that being said, I'm going to help it further by asking it to query the project name as the subject line, and that should do the job. Surely enough, with a little bit more guidance around where to look, Claude was finally able to identify the relevant email thread and relate it to the corresponding rate item. So I'm now going to ask to close the rate item. And before closing it, it nicely summarizes the suggested change and asks for our permission before going ahead. Now that I'm happy with it, I will tell it to close it. And if we look over at the rate log sheet, as soon as this is executed, we see a page refresh prompt. And if we refresh it, we can see that the fields have been changed. So even from that example, you can see the value already. Instead of manually jumping between sheets and emails, we can manage a large part of the process directly from the chat interface. But in a broader Smartsheet environment, the AI still needs to work out where the right information lives and whether it has found the operational source of truth. For quick proof of concepts and immediate productivity gains, Smartsheet MCP is incredibly powerful because it's easy to set up and you can start getting value very, very quickly. And what we're seeing across many organizations is that this often becomes the first stage of AI adoption, starting with highly flexible AI assistants before gradually introducing more structure, governance, and orchestration. So if you want to take this further, this is where a Make MCP server approach becomes interesting. With Make, we can define where the AI looks, what instruction it follows, and what data it has access to. Make can connect to tools like Smartsheet and Outlook, along with 3,000 other applications into structured AI-powered processes. So let me show you a demo of the same scenario, but running inside Make. So this is the Make MCP interface, and underneath Make is orchestrating the interaction across Smartsheet and Outlook. Now, if we look on the left-hand side, we can see that there are the MCP server URL and keys over here, which will allow us to expose the capability of this MCP server to an external AI tool. So from the user's perspective, we still interact through a LLM chat interface in Claude, Copilot, ChatGPT, or Gemini. Now with the URL and also the keys from the Make MCP server, I connected Claude to the rate governance agent that I've set up in make.com earlier. And to go a step even further, I've also set up a project in Claude and defined some initial instructions over here. Now, if you want to know how this has been set up, we will be publishing a full walkthrough video, so stay tuned for the next video that's coming up. Now, in this demo, I am going to highlight the contrast between the native Smartsheet MCP and also the Make MCP by using the exact same prompts and the same AI model. So like before, I'm going to ask the agent to list all the projects under the construction governance program. And that request immediately calls the get project summary capability. Earlier with Smartsheet MCP, Claude had the flexibility to search across the entire Smartsheet environment to find the relevant project information. However, in this Make agent, it calls a predefined project summary capability, so it already knows where to retrieve the project list from. And that makes the first step much more direct. Next, I am going to ask it to give me more information on the project, and with that, it immediately calls for the get rate item capability. So if you can remember earlier in the Smartsheet MCP demo, we gave it broad prompts so that AI had the flexibility to explore all the available project assets, including the budget. But over here, because the Make agent has been configured around this governance process, it goes directly to the rate items for that project. Now I'm going to ask it to check my email and tell me whether or not any of the risks can be closed. And you can see now it's calling for the Outlook search email capability. Again, in the earlier Smartsheet MCP demo, Claude needed an extra hint before it found the relevant email thread. But over here, because we have already given the Make agent guidance on what to query in the mailbox, it was able to find the related email on the first attempt this time. Now, because we've already defined the approval behavior in the system prompt, the agent summarizes the proposed change and waits for confirmation rather than jumping straight to closing the risk item. And now with the email identified, suggesting the resolution of this risk over here, we're going to go ahead and close the risk item. And finally, to fulfill that instruction, the agent is now calling the rate lock update capability. Now that it's been approved, and if we look over at the rate log sheet, we can see that the changes have been applied immediately. So from the user's perspective, the experience is still conversational, but behind the scenes, the Make MCP is operating with a predefined structure. And that is what makes the execution more consistent and predictable compared to the more open-ended Smartsheet MCP interaction that we saw earlier. To validate this further, I tested both approaches across 4 runs using the same prompts and dataset. And the metric I used was time to correct results. And this is not just how quickly AI responds, but how quickly it reaches the right operational outcome. When Claude MCP identified the right project the first time, Make was still roughly twice as fast overall. But the bigger difference was consistency. Claude MCP reached the correct result first time in only 3 out of 4 runs, while 1 run needed additional guidance as you saw earlier. Make MCP, on the other hand, reached the correct result first time across all 4 runs because the relevant sheets, instructions, and email search guidance had already been defined. So the key difference is not just speed, it is predictability. There is also a token efficiency point here. Across the same test runs, the Make approach used around 5% of my Claude Pro usage limit on average, compared with around 9.5% for the Smartsheet MCP approach. This is almost 2 times more. And that is because Make narrows and cleans the data before it reaches the AI, so the model has less irrelevant context to process and can reach the end results much more efficiently. Ultimately, both approaches solve the same problem. They are just optimized for different ways of working. Smartsheet MCP is ideal for ad hoc requests, open-ended AI interactions, and getting value very quickly with minimal setup. Whereas Make MCP is better suited to repeatable operational processes, where you need governance and consistency. So at a high level, the trade-off is really quite simple. Smartsheet MCP is quicker and more flexible, while Make requires more setup, but gives you more structure and control. Although today we've focused on Smartsheet and emails, the bigger opportunity goes much further than this example. The same pattern could extend to meeting transcripts, where AI could identify follow-up actions and update the rate log automatically. It could also connect to time management systems to help update time entries based on what happened in those meetings. But the wider point is that this pattern is not just limited to project management. The same approach could support any process where teams need to connect context across multiple systems before deciding the next action. So the real value here is not just updating a rate item. It is connecting business systems together so AI can retrieve context and reason across multiple sources and then support the next action. Now, whichever route that you take, we'll be publishing 2 related videos. One covering the native Smartsheet MCP setup and another walking you through the Make.com MCP approach behind the scenes. And if you're exploring how AI can be operationalized across project delivery, governance, or even broader business operations, feel free to connect with me or leave any questions in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.